discussion because it combines two very important topics: solo aging and a real life story. And there couldn't be a better person to share this with us because Nancy has a background in healthcare and navigating, helping other people navigate this. But she's going to share with us what she's learned personally and how that's changed her life and how now she's inspiring others to sort of think differently about transitions and what have you. So, Nancy, first off, welcome. And I hope the weather and everything is nice down there in Greenville, North Carolina, South Carolina, where you're living. But and normally, folks, on these discussions, I say, okay, Nancy's going to talk about solo aging, so let's get to know her a little bit better. But today's discussion is about your journey, so I think I'm just going to dive behind the curtain and let you take it away. But I'm going to remind everybody that you can ask questions throughout this discussion. Just type them in, and then we'll have a nice chat where everybody can jump in at the very end. Does that sound good, Nancy?
It does. It does.
Cool. So I will let you share your screen.
Okay.
And Nancy gave me a bunch of great web links, which I'll be dropping in to chat as she kind of navigates through this. So, okay, I am going to duck behind the curtain here, and you take it away, Nancy.
All right. Well, Steve, I got to thank you once again for having me on. Always a pleasure, and I am such a big fan of your work. My name is Nancy Ruffner. I'm a solo ager, and I now live in the greater Greenville, South Carolina area. Professionally, I'm a patient advocate, consulting in matters relative to solo aging, medical and healthcare navigation, and change. I founded and ran a patient advocacy agency for 10 years in Raleigh, North Carolina. And today's story begins about the time I decided to wind down that agency and reconfigure my work to online and relocate to South Carolina. Okay. I learned some hard but valuable lessons in 2022 and 2023. And today I'm here to relay those lessons to you, life lessons, lessons I didn't know that I would experience or learn, like asking for help. And that's a new concept to this very fiercely independent person. And accepting help, that's a separate thing to learn, but equally a difficult lesson to learn. I'm a patient advocate who has always been the helper, but never the helpee. And then I'm going to talk about the time came when the caregiver becomes the patient. You know, that was an uncomfortable role reversal for me, and I was experiencing emotions that were alien to me. I'm going to talk about where my independence turned into interdependence. And that's pretty good for solo agers or anybody that's aging to consider. You know, independence, the thing that so many of us solos value. It can be a great quality. It's handy, it's nifty, but I think I held on to mine too long. I was always independent. I was praised for it as a kid, so of course I've fulfilled that prophecy within my own family. I was the one that went far away to school. I was the one that lived remotely from my nuclear family, the one that always fended for herself. And as you'll hear today, I relied on that strength too much, so much so that I fell short at important times. New to me was this notion of interdependence. I knew it could mean a mutually reliant relationship, that every party needs the other and that they both benefit. You know, I had studied, I knew that there were these characteristics of social connectedness, mutuality, and reciprocity. I understood that, but I understood it intellectually, but I had never felt it. So interdependence can be best illustrated, I think, by that old saying, no man is an island. Interdependence to me means that first, we can serve, which is what Nancy was used to doing. And secondly, we can be served in mutuality and in benefit. So here's my story of independence leading to interdependence. You might hear my 2 lessons about having to ask for help and then learning to accept it. I'm going to talk today about moving and then preparing for surgery. My job today is to relay those, what my thoughts were, how I planned, and the execution of the move. And this is just but one person's way, and certainly not everybody's way. But my hope is that maybe one of my considerations will cause somebody to react with, "Ooh, I never thought about that," or "I'd better take that into consideration in my own search." So I'm here to some degree to exemplify success. Did I do it perfectly? No. And you're going to hear about that too. The first thing I had to do in thinking about a move, I had to do some soul searching, take that good hard look. It was odd to think about myself in so much detail and depth. I had to think about what was important to me and where did I want to live. So I began with categories: must-haves, would-be nices, and deal breakers. And here's a tip, and I'm going to give tips throughout this. So when you see that hot tip, there's something coming. There's a nugget coming for you. And Steve's going to share in the chat, I believe, some of the links that I'm talking about. We'll get you this information. So first tip, if you know you're going to be moving, it might be helpful to capture all of those addresses and automatic bank drafts that you've got set up now. The things you're going to need to change when you move, just jot them down as you go for a few months. Then when you get to a new address and have a new bank, you'll have all of that compiled in a ready list. I thought about how I'd even come to the point of considering a move. I'd been in North Carolina since I was 4, although I'd been in several towns and cities. The apartment that I was presently living in, that I'd moved in for just a bit, had become a 16-year stay. There have been some rumblings inside of me for a while, and more markedly in the last couple of years. I just felt like they were growing louder, and I felt like it was just my time to make a move, that time may be getting shorter. So the decision to close my agency and to move were simply feelings for me of it's time and a little bit of, if not now, when. I didn't know where I was going, but I just knew that I had to be near this. I just had to get to it, or be near it, or be able to get to it, or know that I'm close. Because I took this picture with my cell phone, I knew I could be there. I decided to use this image as a symbol of what I wanted, as a starting point, as a kind of a visual goal. The conversations in my head began. I was thinking about, what do I want? What do I want to avoid? Those must-haves and would-be nices. The considerations about myself and where I want to live. That honest look. The self-assessment. Now, the image you see on this card is a card that I drew from a vision deck while I was at a retreat in 2018. And it's lived where I can see it, sometimes on a bathroom mirror, sometimes near my desk. I've got it right here in front of me now. And I've held on to that and what it means to me. So I began with a self-assessment of what I wanted. Well, I want good weather and climate. If this is going to be the move of the century, then I'm going to go get what I want. I want affordable housing and access to the great outdoors. I wanted proximity to the mountains for remote driving and solitude and serenity for me. I wanted a place where mountains and beach were both within reach. Airports, if I ever needed them for travel. I wanted the presence of faith communities because I knew as a solo ager that community is key and I'm going to need it. I wanted a place with a strong economy where small businesses like mine could find support, kind of an entrepreneurial climate. I wanted infrastructure to be in place, strong Wi-Fi because I work from home, and I needed good cellular coverage because I drive a lot to remote areas. I wanted the arts in museums and street festivals. I wanted some touring Broadway shows, but I also wanted little theater, live music, comedy, improv, festivals, all that. With some idea of what I wanted, I thought about where that could be. The first thing I did was consider every great vacation destination I'd ever had, and I ruled them all out. Where I like to vacation is not where I should live, I found out, because I like remote places where there's often no cell signal or little health care. For example, one beautiful place that I love to hole up in year after year is in Southwest Virginia, and I have to drive 14 miles to make a cell phone call, which is a pretty good segue into my deal breakers. One thing that I knew in this move that I would not be buying a house. You know, for moving decisions for most people is rent or buy. What's it going to be? I thought about what proximity I wanted to have to other people. You know, what do I need? What is wise for me? What do I want? And this deal breaker list goes on. For a lot of people, it's climate. For other people, it's politics or faith or pastimes. For many people, it used to be, you know, are the schools good? But now we might want to take a look at lifelong learning opportunities. Taxes are important to a lot of people. What is taxed and what is the tax rate? Medical. There had to be hospitals and specialists and primary care accessible to me. It's tight nowadays out there to find health care. And I was about to undergo surgery soon. Nothing extensive, but it would require surgery. So this was in the immediate picture for me. And I felt like lack of health care would be a deal breaker now and certainly later. Now, here's a tip. If you want to know the cost of health care, there's an organization called Genworth, and they project costs of long-term care. If looking at your medical view is the thing that you find important and you want to be able to project this into the future, there's a calculator called Genworth Cost of Care. Is it 100% accurate? No, because as a patient advocate, I can spot some regional differences. But if you need to see what the cost of assisted living or skilled nursing is by state, and also see some loose projections into the future, this can help you. I wouldn't move anywhere where there were few options of faith communities because I need that community. I need to plug into that as a solo ager, not only to be in community, but I need to be in service. I need to serve that community. Lack of sunny days was a deal breaker for me. Harsh cold is a deal breaker as well. A struggling economy would be, and a high cost of living. And all that information is available online, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. There were some considerations that were on the bubble for me. Now, while I have political opinions, I didn't choose my state that way. Others certainly may. Infrastructure and traffic and the ability to generate a tax base for the upkeep of that infrastructure seemed important to me. Also of note was walkability. You know, that's a concern for many people, and it ultimately will be for me. It's not needed now, but I want to be in a place that it's available to me if I ever decide I need to move into downtown housing, for example. It just needs to be there. Some things that were not much of a concern or of no concern for me. When I told people I was moving, many people asked, "Oh, do you have family there?" And my response was, "Nope, I don't know a soul." They looked at me like I was nuts. But for me, family proximity, it was not a big concern. They're going to remain where they are. I get that. They have their own concerns for work or school or their care. And I can get there in 4.5 hours if I need to. Taxes and auto insurance, I don't have much stuff to be taxed, but for a lot of people, it's a deal breaker. And I get that. Funny story, I have a friend named Margaret who was newly relocated from New York City, and she was casually asking about the fees to park her car in the deck of her high-rise apartment building downtown. The answer was $75. Now, coming from New York, she said 75 a day, and no, the answer was 75 a month. I also wanted to know if there were going to be opportunities for part-time work. What kind of opportunities would there be for me? And in truth, I did work part-time in a small emergency room for the first year that I was here. It was something to bridge my income, stabilize that while I was making my transition. And it was another slice of healthcare for this patient advocate. Here comes the research. It was time for reading and research. And so first I researched the move itself, how to move. I read stuff from all angles, and you can too. The checklists abound online. So I read packing ones and I read financial ones. Now here's a tip. That pods, the moving container storage outfit, they have a lot of information about move. All kinds of things like packing and planning and what it is that you need to think about and scouting tips. It's the moving companies that have a lot of this great information. The thing you see on your screen there, city data. This is where you can find it all. And you can get granular right down to the city block. But you can find costs by state or city or community, schools, crime, weather, pollution, religions, businesses, hospitals, libraries, restaurants, and their inspections. You can drill down by county, by city, and neighborhood. So there's a comparison tool on there too, and a forum for folks who are asking questions about various cities. Livability.com is another good one another good source, livability.com. Also look at your chambers of commerce for the town or city. Contact them, order their information, or access that online. Municipal websites are good. And here's another one. Travel websites like TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor is where you can see photos and impressions by people who are visiting the area and have taken pictures and are offering comments about things to do, how they found their trip to be, restaurants, and all that. Forbes cost of living calculator allows you to search by city, and it allows you to predict costs of living. So all these sites like this can help you skinny the list, as my friends say. But everybody can research your fun. Is your thing wellness or conferences or sports or dog shows or institutions of higher learning or lifelong learning? Whether it's coastal or lakes or state parks, you can find your fun. The next thing for me was time to travel to some of these potential semifinalists with a more critical eye. So I took trips to a few places, and 4 to the city that I would ultimately choose. I rented an Airbnb, and I intended to look around. I set up a few meetings for business, and I had one job interview. I called it my recon mission or immersion. Well, in that Airbnb, I befriended my host. I read online that she had been a former HR manager, and I thought to myself, oh, she knows people. She'll be a great contact. And so I invited her to breakfast, and over breakfast, I learned that she was married to a retired United Methodist pastor. And I thought, oh, he knows people. And they have been, knowing them has been key for me. And you're going to hear a lot more about my friend Renee as this story goes on. On one trip, I knew that I had found my town. But cautionary, little did I know that this thought and the planning and the research played right into Nancy's independence. It was all for me anyway, right? At this point, I didn't know enough about interdependence to see the value of it or to incorporate it into the move or my impending medical intervention. So here I go with a housing search. Let me just say, I put the word challenging on there. I've got nightmare in my notes. I went with conventional approaches like contacting property management companies and looking on websites. I joined Facebook groups. There were groups like, excuse me, Moving to Greenville. And I even wiggled my way into the Facebook groups for traveling nurses, trying to find safe places to live. About that time, housing boom was, the housing market was booming, and it was affecting the rental market too. It was an absolute disadvantage to be out of town, out of state, and I made a lot of day trips. I was viewing properties by appointment, and they were even having group tours for apartments. Let's just say that after I got there, many of them were not as represented on sites like Zillow and such. I'd get there and there'd be broken glass on the ground and the place would be run down, and it was an old picture that I had seen. It was useful to me to get to know the lay of the land, see some neighborhoods and the potential neighbors. I could see the potential neighbors. And it was, in retrospect, it was good to see that there were folks walking up and down the street with all their belongings in a shopping cart. That's when the personal networking came through. Through my friend Renee and her spouse and a parishioner in their church, I found a great place to live. So I immediately drove down to see it, and I secured it. And you can bet that I was at that church's barbecue plate sale and their Christmas cantata. Now I had my spot. I had my address. Next, I had to move into, think about, how am I going to execute this? So another tip, moving.com is a good one. One article I remember reading said, checklist for moving to another state. So I had to decide what to take and what to donate, and outlets for all those donations, and how to get that done. I took 17 bags of agency files to be shredded, had 3 file cabinets hauled away that I could have sold, or better yet, donated. Yeah, I had all grand designs, but regrettably no time to selectively donate the stuff to causes that would benefit. And that's a big regret of mine. Needless to say, I was not asking for help. I was way too independent. Medical bridging for me, I was already in workup for surgery at Duke Hospital in Raleigh, North Carolina, for treatment that I was going to receive upon moving to South Carolina. I gained my medical records. My plan was to use those medical records to help bridge my providers. And I went ahead and made appointments in South Carolina because I wanted to get the show on the road upon arrival. So here's some tips about that when you're moving in medical care. It's important to get your prescriptions written ahead with enough medication on you to bridge you until you can establish yourself with a doctor or your pharmacy. Another tip, Moving is, if you're on Medicare, you can revisit your Medicare plan because moving can be a qualifying event and you can change your plan. So you can take that opportunity to make sure that you're getting your medications for the best price and at the best place for you. So take the opportunity to look at that again. And always, this is an evergreen resource, is an agency called SHIP. It's spelled SHIP in all caps, or SHIIP, and it stands for Senior Insurance Information Program. It's kind of like a special team of your insurance. It's a federal agency, and it trickles down in all 50 states. You might find it rolled out through your area agency of aging or your state's Department of Insurance. It's a lot of times it's accessed at your local senior center. So you can just Google SHIP, SHIIP, or SHIP, and the name of your state. It's beautiful because it's free. The counselors explain, but do not steer. I made recon trips during made 4 or 5 recon trips to my new destination, and my list about moving and what to take and donate were all swimming around and changing. I started learning more about Greenville, my new destination. There were Facebook groups called Moving to Greenville, Greenville Newcomers, All Things Greenville, and Yeah, That Greenville. So I watched them, and I picked up a copy of the Upstate Business Journal while I was down here on one of my recon trips. I was walking around downtown, and I picked it up, and oh, it was the special healthcare section. And I took that as an omen. I would return home with all of this information, and I would look up everything. And that's how I found my professional group called SPIN, Senior Professionals in Networking, my professional tribe. And I signed up for all kinds of newsletters because I knew I could always unsubscribe. And when it was time, I had to line up my loaders on the leaving end, and that consisted of a fellow who knew a few more fellows. I paid him with pizza and soft drinks, and I gave him a little tip. And I had to hire haulers to get rid of large items. And I used a franchise called College Hunks Hauling Junk. Well, let me tell you, they were not hunks. And on the receiving end, I also had to line up unloaders. I used an agency called Undergrad Movers here locally. They're college kids, and the agency background checks them. For packing, I had but one friend helping me pack and assisting with my final clean out. Her job doubled when my move later turned into 2 moves because the date was fast approaching and I was selling and donating as fast as I could. Well, for the packing part, I combed Facebook and Craigslist and responded to offers of free boxes. I hit 5 different places. I got 5 more. I got a lot more boxes than I needed. And so in turn, later, I would post free boxes myself for other people to pick up. You know, the office is the last thing to pack and the first thing to set up. And on the right there, you can see where I broadcast to y'all throughout all of that time and performed my work live from my laptop. The middle picture is haulers. You can see them there are already on their Tommy lift. They were on the truck, and I had gotten a quote for what I thought was going to be a quarter of their truck. Here's a tip. Always go look at the truck first to see what's already on the truck, because they tried to tell me that I had more than a quarter of a truck, and that would be an extra charge. They tried to assess an extra fee, and I called the office right then and there, and we got that taken care of because money was tight, and my charge card kept getting used. Before we cross the state line here, I want to check in with Steve. I built in time for a question and answer at the end, but Steve, I want to know if there are any burning questions that I should respond to.
Okay, there I am. Had to grab the button. I'm fascinated in hearing your story, and this is great, Nancy. And one of the things that I want to kind of jump in on is you're doing all this alone. Like up till just a couple of minutes ago, you did not mention any friends, any sort of advisor that you were bouncing this stuff off of. And I'd love for your thoughts on number one, is that the reality that as a self-defined solo ager, were you sort of did you feel lonely in this journey? And did you have any sort of like a committee or a best friend or somebody that you were bouncing these ideas by?
Well, I'll start by saying I like your way. I was way too independent. I was very energized by all of the research and the things that I found that would be so practical. And at the same time, I was too alone, too proud, too independent. Uh, Partly because I always had been, that was my way, but I didn't take advantage of a lot of the interdependence and the community that I should have. That could have been a much earlier part of my journey, and
Story.
it would have made it a lot easier.
This is great. Okay, I don't want to derail this too much, but Elaine has a question I was curious about too. Is what was the distance from Raleigh to Greenville, South Carolina, in miles or driving time?
It's 4.5 hours.
Okay,
Um,
it's not too bad, but it's 4.5 hours in your car is 4.5 hours in the car.
you'll appreciate my next slide.
Okay, let you jump back into it, and folks, we will definitely go through all the questions
Yeah.
at the end. Okay, thanks, Nancy. This is interesting.
Okay. Well, here's the move, and I pretty much went on automatic and saw it through. But picture this. Nancy's driving a full-size truck with her car on a trailer in tow on Interstate 85, well known for long stretches of road construction lined with concrete barriers and skinny two lanes for miles. 4.5 hours. But imagine it was more like 6 hours of high anxiety if you count the gas up I had at Bert's truck stop. Imagine me going in to pay at Bert's truck stop and having to walk through the trucker's cafe. Good times. I was somewhere between last straw and prayer during that trip. I think I was pretty emotionally squirrely on the highway. I deeply value the texts from friends, particularly one friend in Georgia who was cheering me on, encouraging me to turn on the radio and to sing my way to South Carolina and to remember what I was driving toward. But sadly, I moved twice. You see, we didn't fit it all in the first truck, but yet I had a deadline to move out. So I had to quickly figure out, what am I going to do? Do I hire another truck? Do I tax my gentleman friend and friends unduly, or do I hire people? Somehow I found a route trucker that had regular runs to Atlanta and would go very close to where I was moving. And I had to plop down an extra $500, and he agreed to load it with his driver helper and drive it to my new location and unload it at 4 a.m. And I was without help and backed into a corner at that point. I had a move out deadline and I was too darn independent. Okay, upon arrival, the first thing I did was get my library card. Looking back, it may have been some sort of an exercise in putting down some of my first roots, declaring myself as here. Um, Guess what I found upon entering the library? There was an upcoming speed friending event. Well, I signed up and I went. But here's where a tip that I've already mentioned pays off. That change of address tip, keeping your change of address, that was all made easier. The United States Postal Service and the other accounts was made easier because I had jotted everything down. So when I found my bank, I knew what was tied to the debit card. I knew what was tied to the credit card. And so those changes were made just a little bit easier. I had to find out about driver's license in my new state. They recommended, and many times maybe law, get your driver's license within 30 days of a move, they say. Well, I had to find the DMV and figure out whether or not I was going to have to take the test. And in South Carolina, there's this funny but not tax called Welcome to South Carolina tax. You pay $200, one-time fee, and it's tied in with your driver's license. There was some move in the legislature to raise that to $500, so I made a beeline to the DMV. I had to figure out utilities and voter registration. It's so nice that all this is online now, because we used to have to figure out where it was and then find it and then go and step up to counters. And it's so much easier than it was before. For me, I had to find doctors. I had done this in advance because I was in workup for surgery. If you need continuity in your medical care, then I suggest that you begin searching and even get an appointment before you move. But your search may be made easier once you're here and can ask around and start to consider your commutes to that doctor. But let's talk a little bit about how to find a doctor. You can use your hospital's website, for instance, and then you can cross-reference those providers with your insurance. It's very hard when you're on Medicare sometimes to find a provider who's accepting new patients. And also I recommend when you're looking on websites, don't expect them to be up to date. You have to call and you have to ask pointed questions. I learned my lesson even before on Medicare. Once I called and made sure that my primary care provider accepted this Blue Cross Blue Shield that I had. And they said, oh, sure, we accept Blue Cross Blue Shield. But when I got there for my appointment, they didn't accept my particular Blue Cross Blue Shield policy. So verify. The best reliable websites to find and vet your physicians, one is called Vitals, and the other one is called Health Grades. You can look on there and find information on the providers. On some of these websites, they'll have comments and reviews by patients, and as you read them, you'll notice that some of the patient comments may descend into the quality of like Yelp. I don't want to find my doctor on Yelp. I think Yelp is where people go to make a post when they're mad. But often good old word of mouth is your best bet. So you have to consider your source there and consider the mouth and is just as important. Ask other people for referrals, doctors, hospitals, because people love to help you. Secondly, it's a great icebreaker for conversations and meeting new people. I'd like to thank my friend Renee, who was helpful in weighing in on hospital systems and physicians and hospital experiences. She also weighed in on tax preparation, financial professional, jewelry repair, tire repair, and so much more. So if hospital systems are what you are after, the best way is to check their quality. There's an outfit called Hospital Safety Grade, and they publish something called the Leapfrog Report. The Leapfrog Report is published semi-annually. It talks about return rates, health infection rates, and it assigns grades to the care. Hospital Compare by Medicare is another real good one. Also had to find an attorney pretty quick. I had to get my documents redone. I needed to make sure that my documents, my legal tools would do for me in South Carolina as they had done for me in North Carolina. Now, I knew how to find and credential attorneys from previous work experience, and I was ready to do just that by looking at state bar sites or elder law attorney sites. I was ready to do that, but I found out through the state bar that there were free legal talks going on across the state of South Carolina on various topics, various locations and dates. And so I went to the one on elder law and estate planning because I wanted to see this attorney. I was going to see if this person was a fit for me, if they would pass my muster. They did, and I hired them. My general orientation. There's Facebook groups for that too. Greenville Newcomers Group. Moving to Greenville still serves you, even though you're still here. Meetup groups played a big part of this. I found meetup groups, new to the area themed meetup groups, which led me to comedy clubs and music. I met a friend who had just moved that I mentioned, Margaret from New York City. And we had both been in healthcare, we discovered, and so we became friends. I found that part-time employment was a good way to orient. Despite my medical workup, I had applied for work in an emergency room, and that was a very helpful way to meet people and obtain a whole lot of information from my coworkers. And you can do this through volunteering as well, if volunteerism is your route. And here's a tip. Read the United Way in your community, just for general lay of the land and also to find volunteer opportunities. The bottom image that you see there is a picture of the annual storytelling and liars competition, where contestants vie for bragging rights of the biggest liar in South Carolina. I go to all kinds of fun and sundry things to do just to try it out, because I can tell you this, I'm not going to meet anybody sitting on my couch. It was time to prepare for surgery, something that a patient advocate takes seriously. I prepared myself as I would one of my clients or a family member, and I thought it through 6 ways to Sunday. Now, my medical date was set. The providers were set. The insurance had been evaluated. I'm on Medicare, and I used SHIP for my questions. My legal documents had been reviewed and updated. I updated my healthcare power of attorney, my durable and financial power of attorney, my living will, and I used the 5 Wishes document, which is an interesting booklet. If you're not familiar with it, 5 Wishes is a tremendous little booklet to help you think, to help you decide, to help you talk and communicate with the people you select to be your designated persons with power of attorney. It's a good thing to look into. And I created this tool called a face sheet. Now, I want to say as a tip also that I held Zooms with my designated agents with power of attorney. I made sure that they had copies of my new documents and that they knew and understood what I wanted and where the documents were on their end and on my end. Anytime that I made pre-surgery appointments, I consider that a get to know your new city excursion. I took note of and found my way around town. I did a lot of cooking ahead of my surgery, partially because I was nervous. So I may as well be the casserole queen and have stuff ready. I really worked on my logistics of the whole surgical event and worked with my friend Renee on that. The surgical event is where my interdependence and the asking for help was first exercised. Renee drives me to the surgery and waits with me until I was taken back. She even initiated prayer with me until I went back for surgery. Renee became my point person to receive the texts from the hospital with the play-by-play updates. You know, Nancy is entering surgery. Nancy's coming out of surgery. Nancy's in the recovering room and can receive visitors shortly. And then Renee could text my very important persons. Of course, during all this surgical stuff, I expected to be the patient, expected to be the recipient of help while I was in the hospital. I could deal with that amount of help, with that amount of dependence. I could agree to it because it had a beginning and an end. This face sheet tool, and I apologize for the caliber or quality of that image. This face sheet tool is a page that I created with, that I took with me to the hospital and gave to my very important persons, including Renee. And it's like name, address, phone number, who your healthcare power of attorney and designates and alternates are in case of emergency contact. Am I a donor? What's the date of the surgery? Who's doing the surgery? Who the surgeon is? Had my insurance information on there. What I was allergic to. And then who my primary provider was. And I had it all on this nice little list. I gave a copy to Renee and to my very important persons and a distant relative. I had 2 copies with me in my go bag to the hospital. One copy stayed in the bag and the other one lived right there on my tray table. And what this tool did for me, everybody, it brought me peace of mind. And Renee and my very important persons and the nurses in the hospital admired it also. If anybody wants a copy of this, they're welcome to email me and I'm happy to send you one. But here's the thing. The act of creating this, in actuality, was my exercise in seeing how interdependent I was in this whole process. Here's recovery. I was now getting comfortable with this interdependence thing, letting folks help me, being the patient, being the recipient of care. All this was alien to me. I was, pardon me. I was discharged the next day and Renee picked me up and I stayed in a familiar Airbnb. There you see it in the photo until I was ready to go home and complete my recuperation. And while you're laying around counting your blessings, you have a chance to reflect on things. And during that time, I became aware of my shift from independence to interdependence, aware of asking and in turn letting folks help me, and to be really okay with this and to heal. And everybody kept telling me that was normal. But I had time to rest and think about it all and to become comfortable with it and to really let gratitude swaddle me. I've made some investments in this interdependence thing since then. I can again cite Renee in this one. I've become able to help out when she had medical intervention. And I'm proud to say that I've been trained and have become the alternate cleaner for this sweet Airbnb called the Hollies. It feels good to prepare a place for other people and to be of service. Nowadays, my new normal, I've changed my work style and I've modified my services. I can focus now on building community and being in community. I got to put it in, I got to pay it forward, all that. I'm making the changes that I know to be good for solo agers, mindful of healthcare, getting my legal ducks in a row, and getting plugged in. I'm really working on work and life balance. One day I'm going to enter this long exit ramp to retirement, but I'm better at this than I used to be. And I'm exploring new ideas and new leisure skills. And I'm very much open to discovery nowadays. So here's the lessons learned, and I'll say 5 of them really. I had to learn how to ask for help. I had to learn how to accept help. I knew what independence was because I've been doing it all my life. But interdependence held 2 lessons: that I needed people in my life and that I needed to be in other people's lives. So that independence had been kind of a one-way street, and interdependence is a two-way or a multi-way way of life that enables my autonomy. So all this has taken me about a year. I'll be learning and participating in this interdependence forevermore, I expect. Uh, Again, this has just been one person's way, certainly not everybody's way, but my hope is that maybe in what I've said causes somebody to react with, I never thought about that, or I need to take this into account in my search. So find your thinking, your sorting, your way. That's important. I had mine, you'll have yours. And there's my contact information if you need it. Thanks for that. That concludes my remarks. I'd love to go into Q&A.
Right. Well, first off, Nancy, thank you so much for putting your thoughts together. You clearly put this was very well organized and very thorough. And for those who've seen the discussions where I interview folks, they are probably grateful because you said a bunch of things where I would have jumped in with my own thoughts. So I love how you documented the story. So now we are going to get to all of the questions, but I just want to let folks know it's 5 minutes to the top of the hour. If you got to jump off, don't worry because this is recorded. All of the chat, all those links, everything in there, it's going to be on the recording link at proaging.com. So let me dive into some of these, and I'm really curious at your insights and things of that nature. So Brandon asks, were public transportation options a considering factor in your decision to move?
They were not in my immediate move. When I mentioned walkability, I foresee myself as ultimately having to move into some walkable type of community and I need to plan for it. That's why I needed to move to a city that had that. So to some degree, I did. But I'm glad you brought it up because that deserves another mention. Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, and public transportation is a theme here because somebody else says, thank you for the presentation. I'm working with an aging group and I wanted to pick your brain about how public transit has helped or is helpful for older people who move to a new city. So whoever, this is an anonymous question, whoever asked that, feel free to just reach out to Nancy. She's awesome. And her contact information is there. It'll be really easy accessible at the recording link as well. Okay, so let's see what else we've got here. Okay. First thing to set up your bed. At least you can sleep when you're exhausted. Really good point there, Teresa. And out of curiosity, the home that you had in Raleigh, did you sell that home or were you renting there?
I was renting it, and I'd been in there for 16 years, so you can imagine I had a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah.
And relative to the remark about the bed, my college unloaders put my bed together for me.
Oh, that's great. And somebody, I think Jan Brito had mentioned, senior move managers are a great resource. You didn't use one, or did you use one?
I did not, but I'm a big proponent of that.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. With my father, we used senior move managers 3 times.
Oh, wow. Okay. And then somebody asked, I'm sure I'll get to the question, but I'm glad we brought this up. And again, on these discussions, age is just a number, but somebody was asking, what is your age range? Like, how old are you?
I am 67, so I moved when I was 66.
Got it.
Pretty stupid to load up a U-Haul truck, I think, in retrospect, and drive it across the state.
Here's where I would sort of edit that. I mean, the important thing is what you shared with us is choices that you made,
Yeah.
okay? And like hey, uh you may, after going through this experience, you may say that, geez, loading up a U-Haul myself and driving it down there wasn't the choice that I would make if I did it again, but that was your choice to make, and
Yeah.
but the important thing, folks, that we don't want to say is we don't want to say, I'm too old to drive a U-Haul. Okay. I'm too old to load it up. It's because, trust me, there are 20-year-olds that would never imagine loading up a U-Haul. They would have mommy and daddy pay for a moving company, so there's nothing that's a personal choice, not an aging type thing. Um, let's see. Can you talk a little bit more about what drew you to Greenville over Raleigh? And I know that view, that photo is still burned into my mind, but they also ask, do you feel that Greenville is more age friendly than your previous community in Raleigh?
I would say that both Raleigh and Greenville are age friendly. I would say that what attracted me to Greenville was I wanted to get further west. I wanted to be in the foothills, closer to the mountains, because that's kind of my jam. Um, Greenville is a good place to age, and is a destination city. It has a strong economy. Both communities have Raleigh and Greenville have tremendous structure in terms of senior providers, if senior services, aging and disability services, they are both in place. And I'm proud to say that about both of them. It's important to me. I not only work in it, but I've come to expect it.
I love it. Okay. Glenna asked, who was the reference you mentioned after college hunks hauling junk? It sounded like somebody that helped you with unpacking. Is that right?
Yes, on the loading in, I had some junk hauled away, and then I had the friends helping me load the U-Haul truck. Then I needed unloaders on the receiving end, and so I had to have somebody here, and I used an agency that vets college kids to do
Oh,
that.
okay. It was like undergrads.
Yeah, undergrad moving
Okay,
here in
good.
the Greenville area. Greenville, they're out of Clemson, I think.
Okay, got it. Beatrice says it's hard to find resources as a solo ager, even when you have a family around, it's hard. And but as I listen to your dialogue, it is easy to sort of like listen to this, and all the solo aging dialogue is that it's kind of like, oh gosh, Nancy had to do all this on her own. However, the thing that I like about when I hear these stories is that it's the empowerment. It's like it's the problem solving. It's like, I have to figure this out. I don't pass this on to my kids. I don't let my husband deal with this part of the move. Like, you had to take ownership of this life change, and what I gleaned was you're really good at taking ownership of things, but you sort of learn the lesson of where it's okay to put yourself in a position where you can accept help. Um, uh,
I totally agree. I said to somebody about this the other day. It went from my head to my heart. You know, I do all of this. I help people with moving and thinking and planning both their medical decisions, but sometimes it's moving. And even if it's just moving across town, or, I help people with the thought process professionally. And so I thought I could do a pretty good job personally, but I was not prepared for, but am grateful for those life lessons.
I love it. Okay. Let's see. Some Retta was asking about SHIP. Can you give the breakdown of SHIP again? And Retta, I am dropping the SHIP website into chat so it's fresh for you. But that senior health insurance
Informational
information
program. Mhm.
program. And
Loosely, because sometimes it's SHIP, sometimes it's SHIIP. It changes from state to state, but you'll find it.
um, let's see, Catherine says, one of the best solo aging presentations ever. This was an ideal blend of general, excellent, preparatory, moving, settling in advice, practical items that tend to, and special resources. Thank you. I agree. And you know, folks, the other thing to remember is that Nancy is an expert in this segment of senior living and patient advocate. Like, and listen to the even though she practices this and helps people, this is still really challenging and confusing stuff, you know. So and let's see. Susan says Greenville is close to Clemson. Both Raleigh and Clemson have strong universities. That I would say that being close to academic institutions is a real plus in terms of places for us in that older adult chapter of life to live.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Steve, because both Clemson and Furman University have OLLI, OSHA Lifelong Learning programs, and they're tremendous. As a matter of fact, the number of people involved in the Furman University OLLI program eclipses the number of students at Furman University.
Oh my, wow. Hey, I like that. Talk about an empowering movement, you know, of you know, that is really a pretty cool thing. I might have you come back on. I could see us doing a little bit of that would make an interesting discussion about an older adults program eclipsing a traditional academic
Yeah.
institution. Yeah. Let's see. Hello, Steve. Oh, okay. Tracy, I am so glad that you mentioned this. There is going to be a 6-week solo aging course that starts in this Monday, and it's free of charge. And Tracy dropped that into to chat. Tracy, just so you know, I forgot to drop that into the email that I sent out this morning. But what I'm going to do is a follow-up solo aging email this afternoon and put an invite to your course there because I know that could be helpful to a lot of people. Okay. Okay. I think we got about everything. Let's see. Somebody asked, do you provide acute care crisis management services for older people admitted to the hospital as a patient advocate?
I do. My services are online, working with the patient or their loved ones by phone or by Zoom. If you need boots on ground, I'll get you where you need to be. My practice I've transitioned during this move to just online, but I'm happy to connect you. Call me, I'll get you where you need to be.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I'm just sharing Nancy's website, nancyruffner.com, and I tell you, your transparency and sharing this journey of your own transitions, I feel like that speaks to your value as helping other people.
Yeah.
You know, it's you really probably have even more empathy now than you did before with the story that you've just shared.
It's near and dear to my heart. You know, it's easy for me to walk my talk. I'm going to be involved in something that I believe in.
That's great. Well, I see we've gone well over an hour here. It doesn't surprise me. It always happens on these solo aging discussions, but this has been great. I thank you so much for sharing your story and the preparation that you definitely put into this. Nancy, I'll get this up on the website with all the contact, with all the chat, with all those links. And then folks, we'll see you at the next one. And Nancy, folks, I'm going to be in Greenville, South Carolina. Thanks to the Fairfax Area Agency on Aging, I'm getting an award from the Southern Gerontological Society. I had no idea that Nancy lived in Greenville, South Carolina. So we're going to definitely make a point to connect when I'm down there, and I can really kind of check out what sounds like a wonderful community that you are a part of.
I appreciate that. And thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's been fun.
I love it. All right. Talk to you soon.
All right.